For years, the deal was simple. Give up your legroom, give up your snacks, accept that your carry-on bag is going to cost you extra and that the seat you booked might be next to the bathroom. Do all of that, and in exchange, you could fly across the country for the price of a takeout dinner. $20, $30, maybe $40. Coast to coast, wheels up, no questions asked. This is the ultra-low-cost carrier model, the ULCC. And for a time, it was supposed to be the future of aviation. Lean, efficient, ruthlessly unbundled, and seemingly unstoppable. Strip the flight down to its absolute bare bones. A seat, a seatbelt, and a destination. Charge for everything else. Let the passenger decide what they actually want to pay for, instead of bundling it all in and hiking the base fare. It was a genuinely brilliant idea, and it worked for a while. But today, that dream is curdling into a financial nightmare. While legacy giants like Delta and United are reporting billions in profit and filling premium cabins faster than ever, the budget kings are teetering on the edge of collapse. Spirit Airlines has been fighting for its corporate life. Southwest Airlines, once the golden child of low-cost flying, is radicalizing its own business model in a desperate pivot. And the bare fare that built these carriers from the ground up, it's quietly becoming a relic of the past. So what went wrong? How did the most efficient business model in the sky, the one Wall Street championed, the one that was supposed to democratize air travel, suddenly find itself losing altitude? Today, we're breaking down exactly why. The first force killing the ULCC model isn't turbulence, and it isn't a recession. It's a fundamental shift in what passengers actually want and what they're willing to pay for. After the pandemic effectively paused global travel for 2 years, something unexpected happened when the world reopened. People didn't come rushing back just looking for the cheapest seat. They came back with a new mindset. Psychologists call it revenge spending. Travelers who had been cooped up at home were finally spending money on experiences, and they wanted those experiences to be good, not transactional, not miserable, good. Airlines call the surge that followed revenge travel, and it changed the entire demand landscape of the industry almost overnight. Suddenly, the passenger who used to obsessively hunt for the lowest price was now scrolling through upgrade options. Suddenly, the business traveler who would have tolerated a middle seat in row 32 was checking whether there were extra legroom seats available at the front of the plane. Legacy carriers caught on fast. Delta, United, and American had something that Spirit and Frontier fundamentally lacked: product diversity. They could offer a true spectrum from bare-bones basic economy all the way up to lie-flat business class, with about 15 product tiers in between. And in a masterstroke of competitive strategy, legacy carriers introduced basic economy fares, tickets that matched and sometimes undercut Spirit prices, while still sitting within the same aircraft, the same network, and the same frequent flyer program. Think about what that means for a traveler. If Delta can offer you a ticket at roughly the same price as Spirit, but with the option to upgrade your seat if you decide you want more legroom, or to earn miles that you'll actually use someday, why would you choose Spirit? You get the cheap price either way, but with Delta, you also get a safety net. You get options. ULCCs are structurally trapped. They only have one product, the budget seat. When the market shifts toward passengers wanting to buy up, the airline that only sells down loses its most valuable customers, the ones who are willing to spend more if the experience justifies it. Legacy carriers learn to play both ends. ULCCs only know one note. The entire ULCC business model is built on a single foundational premise: your costs have to be significantly lower than your competitors. That's it. That's the whole game. If you're not operating at a dramatically lower cost per available seat mile than a legacy carrier, then the math simply doesn't work. You can't charge $60 for a ticket that costs you $80 to operate.
For years, budget carriers maintained that edge through a combination of factors. They operated single aircraft-type fleets, no expensive cross-training, simplified maintenance. They turned planes around faster, squeezing more flights per aircraft per day. They paid newer, less experienced pilots and flight attendants at lower rates, and they operated on thinner margins because they flew fuller planes. But two enormous forces have been eating away at that cost floor: labor and fuel. On the labor side, the aviation industry is in the grip of a pilot shortage that shows no signs of resolving quickly. After the pandemic, thousands of experienced pilots took early retirement. Training pipelines take years to replenish. And the pilots who are left, they know they have leverage. The result has been an industry-wide wave of labor contract negotiations, with pilot unions at carrier after carrier securing historic pay increases. Here's the brutal irony for budget carriers. When a first officer at Spirit or Frontier negotiates a salary that approaches what a first officer at Delta makes, the single biggest cost advantage of flying for a ULCC has just evaporated. The pilot sitting at the controls doesn't get paid less because the seats around them are cheaper. Labor costs are largely fixed per flight, regardless of what the ticket price is. Then there's fuel. Jet fuel is the single largest variable cost for any airline, and it's volatile, subject to global oil markets, geopolitical shocks, and supply chain disruptions that no CFO can fully predict or hedge against. For legacy carriers, fuel is painful but manageable. It's one large expense among many. But for ULCCs, where the operating model has been optimized to the absolute bone, fuel represents a larger percentage of total operating costs. When fuel prices spike, the damage is proportionately worse for budget airlines. Put it together, labor floors rising, fuel costs spiking, and the ticket price ceiling, what budget passengers will actually tolerate, barely moving. You're being squeezed from both sides, and you don't have the premium cabin revenue that a Delta or United can fall back on when the economy seat math stops working. If the labor and fuel problems were a slow bleed, the Pratt Whitney Engine Crisis was a sudden, brutal wound. Many ULCCs placed enormous bets on the Airbus A320neo, the new engine option variant of Airbus's best-selling single-aisle jet. The promise was a roughly 15 to 20% improvement in fuel efficiency compared to the older model, thanks largely to Pratt Whitney's next-generation geared turbofan engine, the GTF. For a cost-obsessed business model like a ULCC, a double-digit fuel saving was transformational. These weren't just new planes, they were the entire strategic foundation of expansion plans. Then came the recall. A manufacturing defect in a specific powder metal used in the engine's high-pressure turbine disc required affected engines to be inspected and in many cases removed from service far ahead of their expected maintenance schedules. Hundreds of engines across dozens of airlines needed to come off wing. Parts to replace and repair them in critically short supply. For a carrier like American Airlines, which operates hundreds of aircraft across multiple fleet types, grounding a few dozen planes is a serious operational headache that can be managed. Flights get rerouted, spare capacity absorbs some of the impact, and the accounting takes a hit. For Spirit Airlines, it was closer to a catastrophe. At the peak of the crisis, Spirit had nearly 10% of its entire fleet sitting idle on the tarmac, waiting for parts. That isn't a headache, that's a hemorrhage. Every day a plane sits on the tarmac is a day it isn't generating revenue, it isn't covering its own costs, it isn't paying back the debt that financed its purchase. And because these were specifically the newest, most fuel-efficient planes in the fleet, their absence meant that Spirit was forced to operate older, less efficient aircraft in their place, burning more fuel at the worst possible time. The engine crisis didn't cause Spirit's financial collapse on its own, but it arrived at exactly the wrong moment, landing on top of all the other structural problems already battering the company. The final force may be the most damaging of all because it's self-inflicted. Faced with declining load factors, rising costs, and passengers drifting toward legacy carriers, ULCCs and low-cost carriers alike has started making a desperate pivot. They're trying to become something they were never designed to be. Call it legacy light. Southwest Airlines, the carrier that spent more than 50 years making open seating and 2 free checked bags its entire brand identity, announced it would be moving to assigned seating and introducing premium seats. The carrier that built a cult following on the simplicity of pick any seat is now adding the complexity that its competitors have always carried. Southwest fans who chose it specifically because it was different are now wondering what exactly they're loyal to. Frontier, meanwhile, began introducing business-class bundles and upgraded fare tiers that packaged together perks considered antithetical to the ULCC philosophy. Here's the problem. This pivot doesn't lead to salvation, it leads to strategic no man's land. When a budget carrier starts adding premium seats, its costs go up. It needs to redesign cabin configurations, retrain crews, manage more complex fare structures, and invest in marketing a product that its core customers didn't ask for and that its aspirational new customers don't quite trust it to deliver. The airline that was once ruthlessly cheap is now just kind of average. Too expensive to win on price, not premium enough to win on experience, caught in the middle, competing against carriers that have been doing the middle better for decades. It's not a transformation, it's a slow fade. What we're watching in real time is the great aviation consolidation. The industry is evolving toward a world where every airline occupies roughly the same middle space, a blend of basic and premium, a range of fare classes, a loyalty program, and a network built for flexibility. The radical outliers are being absorbed or eliminated. The $19 cross-country ticket was a genuine miracle, a product of aggressive fuel hedging, lean operations, optimized schedules, and a specific moment in history when labor was cheap and fuel was stable, and passengers were desperate enough for a deal that they'd accept almost any trade-off. That window wasn't just closing. For most of the industry, it's already closed. As travelers, we'll feel this in our wallets. The floor on airfare is rising, and the pressure that budget carriers once put on legacy airlines to keep prices competitive is weakening. When Spirit disappears, or when Frontier becomes unrecognizable, the industry loses a price anchor, and that cost will eventually pass to the passenger. The market has spoken, and its message is unmistakable. Being the cheapest isn't enough anymore. You have to give a passenger a reason to choose you beyond the number at the bottom of the search results. And for the airlines that built everything on that number, the runway is running out. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more on how the aviation industry is reshaping itself for the next decade, hit subscribe and we'll keep you flying. Clear skies.